My name is Rita Tucker Williams, and I am the owner and CEO of the law firm of Williams and Associates. We are injury lawyers. Well, growing up here in Atlanta, Georgia, I'd never met anybody who was a lawyer when I was a little girl. I had seen lawyers on TV, and my vision or thinking about a lawyer was that they were these older men with gray hair who had on black robes. And that's how I saw them. As I matured and went to high school, well, people were picking careers, and the career that was picked for me by my father was to become a teacher. I thought about it and I thought, okay, I'll do that. That's what Dad wants me to do. I'll definitely go to college because my parents didn't go to college. And then later, a friend of mine who was a really dear friend said that he wanted to become a lawyer. And I was like, well, how do you become a lawyer? Because I didn't know. And I thought about it and thought about him. The kind of not so happy part of the story is that he got lost on his way to becoming a lawyer. And at some point, after I taught about 5 years, I decided that I would be the lawyer for all of us, for the ones who made it and the ones who didn't make it to become a lawyer. And so I started applying to schools, and I believe I was accepted into 36 law schools across the country, which is really sort of amazing when I think about it today. I also got a scholarship, and here I was, I had been a teacher, and all these schools were vying for me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty exciting. So I thought, why not the best law school in Georgia? Why not go to a school where not too long ago I couldn't even go to school? Let's go there. So I went to Emory, and that started me on the road to becoming a lawyer. And of course, I needed to pass the bar and all those things and graduate from law school. And I did that. I fulfilled on the vision. Not that I'm a lawyer, but maybe still, that we're lawyers. The one thing I'd say is I love words. I love the spoken word, I love the visual word. I think that words have power. My dad was a minister, and so I always have this part of the Bible that says, in the beginning there was the word, right? It's just the word. So teaching is about words too, and communicating. So that was a transferable skill. My love of structure, my love of taking a very complex idea and making it simple so that people understand. So people come into my office and they have stories that are so complex. Some are happy, some are sad. But it's my job to take that and make it simple so that anyone could understand it, could feel their plight, could want to make a difference for them, to let them know that they are heard and that someone cares about what they're going through. So when I think about transferable skills, I think that I was born to be a lawyer. I can't even imagine another career that I'm better suited for. It's almost as though I could translate languages, again, words, because I get it. It moves me. It touches me. I love being a lawyer, and it wasn't hard at all. Justice is the light that leads me. And why do I say? Because to me, justice is a level playing field. It is the idea that we live in a world where people can be treated fairly. And I understand that that is an ideal. It doesn't always happen, but it doesn't mean we can't hope for it. We can't stand for it. We can't bring that. So when I go into a courtroom, particularly maybe here in Georgia, justice doesn't always show up at the front door. But one thing I know, if I show up, I'm bringing justice. I will deliver that. It means so much to me because our vision is standing for a world of grace, justice, and power for all people. Justice means everything to the law. I have more power when I'm communicating someone else's story. A lot of times I was raised to not complain, to not really ask for a lot for myself. But when I'm standing for others, it's much easier. So we give people hope here at Williams and Associates. We give them the idea that they could achieve justice. I used to think about wanting to be in a high-rise, like the big skyscraper buildings, right? And I never will forget this. And so this tells the whole story of a story. And I was like, I'm gonna have a building way up in the sky, because I used to work at this law firm. I had this building, and it was really, really tall. And then I remember a friend of mine who said, you wanna have a building way up in the sky, but the people who you will represent and make a difference in their lives, they're down here on the street. They're the people who you walk by every day. And it changed the trajectory of my life. I want to tell the story of everyday people. My goal is not to be the best lawyer that money can buy. I want to be a lawyer who brings justice to society, to the people, the everyday people walking on the street, that we are their voice. We care about them and the story that they bring to us to tell to the world. Faith is very important to me. It's always been important to my family. We grew up in the church. My father was a minister, and my grandmother and her mother were evangelists, which means they told people about God. They were versed in speaking the word, right? So for me, my favorite scripture is this one. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Therefore, everything that is seen comes from the unseen. And that's a verse out of Hebrews. But why is that important to me? It's important to know that when I was a little girl, I would walk around with a briefcase, right? And then women weren't lawyers then, and mainly women that looked like me cleaned people's houses, and maybe we were lucky if we were teachers. So I would walk around with a little drawer under my arm when I was about 3 years old, and I'd say, I'm gonna be a businesswoman. So I'd carry the little drawer, and that was, even then, a faith that tomorrow would be a brighter day. That I didn't have to live into what other people saw as my future, but I could create my own future. So that's what faith means to me. One case that I am particularly proud of is the Parks versus Hyundai case. It was a case involving a family. It was my first actual products liability case. When we look at a product and see how can we make it safer for humanity, safer around the world. And that particular case, there was a family and they were in a tragic wreck. And the little boy, who was 5 years old at that time, didn't make it. So I was looking at the vehicle saying, what are the proponents or components that would make this car safer? And in doing that case, the case was dismissed, meaning that the court sort of threw it out, and we took it to the Court of Appeals. And they sided with us, saying that the cause we were upholding was correct. And what that case did was expand the law on adding a party in Georgia. So there was a part of the law that didn't exist. And I remember my son Brandon was working with me. And I'd say, look at this case, because there wasn't any what we call precedent quite. And he said, no, Mom, the case doesn't say that. But I remember saying to him, but if the law were just, that is what the law would want to say. So just last night, I was working on a brief. And for those of you who don't know, a brief is like a legal term paper. And I realized that the case that I was looking at also had some verbiage on the side of it. And that case Riches versus Snyder, told the story that the Parks versus Hyundai case, which is one that we took to the Court of Appeals because it was such an important issue, that we had cited the Riches versus Snyder case in our brief. And it made me think that we may never know the difference we make in the world. That here I am looking at something that was done 20 years ago, and basically that case transformed and expanded the law in Georgia. My great, 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 great grandchildren can look up that case and know that we were instrumental in transforming the law to make it more just in Georgia. I am a spoken word artist, so that's the creative part that kind of takes me out of the law, because sometimes I can be really serious. And when I'm a voice actress, what I usually depend upon is rhythm. If you listen to my voice, it kind of has a rhythm and a cadence to it. It sort of sounds like my roots. It has like a movement to it. Sort of like a dancing with words and your voice. And my most recent endeavor in voice acting was to work on a video called The Whisper. So the idea of The Whisper, which was a poem that I wrote, and other artists had their artwork in the video. And my son Blake, our operations manager, he danced. And the idea was to take an idea or a word, something in our mind, and bring it to fruition in the world. And what that takes to bring it out, to make it real, to make it have form, to make it have rhythm, to make it have meaning, was what I wrote. And we presented that. And it was one of the things I'm most proud of, because it was playful and not serious and joyful. And it was all about creativity. And I loved it. So I love that part of my personality. It allows me to play. The one experience that has taught me the most happened last year. I've been married a long time. We just celebrated an anniversary. But last year, at about this time, my husband became critically ill. And it was really a difficult time. I had to employ my faith. And being a lawyer, we help other people. I'm not so versed in asking for help, but I realized it was bigger than me. It was bigger than something I could handle by myself. So I remember asking people, would you pray for us? Would you keep us in your prayers? And at that time, I didn't really see how things were going to work out. I think it brings up that faith word again. I really had to walk by faith and believe that we could get through it. And one thing that I took on at that time was that I wanted to be a voice for people to know that when you're critically ill, you can get better. And whether you get better or not, we can make the best of the life that we have right now. We could live until we die. You don't have to die and take 2 years, but live right now. And so now my husband is well. He's back at work. It didn't even seem possible. It really is a miracle of faith and modern medicine. And what I learned, really, that I want to share with the world, is no matter what a situation looks like, remember this: we have no idea what is possible. We have no idea what is possible. So let me just say that professionally, the things that I remember the most, having witnessed historically, is, can you believe this, that I was a little girl when I saw Dr. Martin Luther King do the I Have a Dream speech. And I remember thinking when he was saying the red hills of Georgia, and that there would be a day when little brown children and little white children could sit down at the table of brotherhood. I'm a witness to that. I just think that is so wonderful. I remember President John F. Kennedy speaking and saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? John F. Kennedy, he must be one of my heroes, because I also remember him saying, we will go to the moon. And he said, we seek to go to the moon. We seek to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. I love that. Or Maya Angelou speaking, phenomenal woman. Pretty women wonder just where my secret lies. I say, I remember that like it's today. The greats of the greats, seeing Gandhi, the movement, seeing what happened in Alabama, seeing the freedom riders, knowing that people gave their lives that all of us could be free. I'm a blessed human being, and I want to spread that and share that with the world.